This is Hannibal, the lead reporter here at thehannibaltv.com, and I am going to try something new this week. Instead of doing audio tidbits on all the wrestling leagues out there on the news I've read in the latest Wrestling Observer. It came out less than 12 hours ago. I read through it, so I'm going to share with you guys the notes that I found interesting from reading this week's Observer, which I subscribed to, I think, a couple months ago to help provide you guys better news, because I've been getting a lot of great feedback on the news posts on this channel, and they are a lot cheaper to produce than the shoot interviews that I do, which are quite expensive, but I have quite a few of them in the works. So I have some good ones coming up. What is up to you, John Elder? Nice to see you. But to get into the AEW news, according to the Wrestling Observer, they had a lower pay-per-view buy rate. The final numbers have not come out yet for the all-out pay-per-view. It looks like it might be about 28,000 buys. The real numbers will come out soon. Double or Nothing ended up being at about 39,000, so 11,000 more buys for the Double or Nothing pay-per-view. Nyla Rose, the controversial transgender wrestler, won the Casino Battle Royal on the All Out pay-per-view and will be facing Riho for the women's title on the first episode of TNT, which I guess they are promoting a lot in the US, because I actually went to the chiropractor this afternoon to get an adjustment from all the heavy lifting I've been doing lately. And he had just come from a trip to the US, and he said that he saw lots of ads for AEW, and he asked me what AEW was. And that is the very first person that I know of outside of wrestling who has brought up AEW to me. So I found that interesting. People are starting to know about it. In an interview with Hollywood Life, Chris Jericho claimed that he hadn't heard of anyone in NXT. I'll be perfectly honest, other than Walter, who I only know because of his match with PCO, I don't know any of the people in NXT really either. I don't know much about it other than what I read. Dean Malenko was at StarCast, and apparently he did an interview saying he's suffering from Parkinson's disease. So I was never really a Dean Malenko fan, but there's no question he was a talented wrestler, and I'm sorry to read that. Chris Jericho will be challenged for the world title, if he's still champion by then, by Cody Rhodes at the Full Gear pay-per-view in Baltimore, November 9th. Someone's commenting AEW's women's division is a struggle. The only match I've seen is a Liberians match. I've found her pretty cute, so I did enjoy that, but that's the only AEW's women's match I've seen. For WWE news, there has been a writing team shakeup. I really hate writers in wrestling, so I don't really care. In the end, Vince has the call on everything, so it really doesn't matter. I did see that video WWE put out and then made unlisted with their writing team a couple months ago. I think it came out in May. And what a bunch of geeks, in my opinion, those writers were. I know they kind of started writing around the Vince Russo era, but he was still involved in a pretty small team. I'm not a fan of all these writers at all. So in WWE attendance, there was supposed to be 3 US NXT shows this weekend. 2 of the Florida shows were canceled, and the August 29th Orlando NXT event drew 350 people. In Wales, the August 30th NXT Takeover special drew 3,600 at the Metro Point Arena in Cardiff. The next night, they had an NXT UK TV taping that drew 1,300. On the WWE side of things, there wasn't a lot of house shows this past weekend at all. There was no SmackDown house shows and only one Raw house show in White Plains, New York, which drew well. I've heard that White Plains has always been a good city for WWE. They drew 3,700 fans for a house show, which is good. The September 2nd Raw in Baltimore drew 5,500 fans. That, I guess, was at the same building where the AEW pay-per-view is going to be in November. And then on the 3rd in Norfolk is where the SmackDown tapings were, and they had 4,500 for those SmackDown tapings. Regarding the Madison Square Garden TV tapings, the Raw is about 75% sold, even with Austin now added in a segment. And the SmackDown with The Undertaker is about 55% sold. And Dave Meltzer believes that it could be the lowest ever TV taping shoot for a TV taping at MSG for that SmackDown, unless something drastic happens soon. The September 23rd and 24th tapings in San Francisco for the opening of the new arena there has 2-for-1 deals going on right now. So I guess tickets aren't selling that great for that if they're doing that. WWE has canceled the October 17th house show in Corbin, Kentucky. Ric Flair has gone public, I guess today or yesterday, about this lawsuit he's filed regarding the man catchphrase for a wrestler. Someone says they're going to buy a ticket just because I told them about the show. Cool. Good. I'm helping WWE. So for the people that hate me in WWE, I'm spreading news. And by the way, I don't hate AEW. They've done some impressive stuff so far. The whole gimmick with Jericho and the belt was pretty impressive to me. But there is some weird stuff they're doing too. But to the Ric Flair lawsuit, he says he's doing that because his wife, she wants to have his wife financially secure if he passes away. Supposedly it's gotten him some heat with Charlotte. It's expected that would not actually go to court. Dave Bautista is going to be a character in the new Gears of War video game. Daniel Rodheimer, I don't even know if I'm spelling that or pronouncing that right, but I did wrestle him in 2006 in Deep South Wrestling for a match back when Nova was the talent relations guy, and we did have a good match. People were telling me after that was one of the best matches they'd seen Rodheimer have, but he's in the news because I guess in the U.S. here, he is running for the House of Representatives as a Republican from Nevada in 2020. So good luck to him. I actually always did like him. He had a lot of heat because he didn't know much about wrestling, and it seemed like he was going to get a push. I had already left Deep South Wrestling by the time he was released, so I don't know why he was ultimately released, but they certainly liked him. Someone's saying Ric Flair was in the game Red Alert 3. That's cool. I don't know much about video games. I stopped playing at Super Nintendo. Linda McMahon contributed $365,600 and $365,600. We are live here, people, to Donald Trump's 2020 re-election campaign. Scarlett Bordeaux, whose AAA debut has about 30 million YouTube views right now and counting, got a WWE tryout this past week, but it wasn't with a group. It was just herself. So good luck to her. I don't know anything about her other than I hear that she left Impact recently. In New Japan Ring of Honor news, Matt Taven's contract is going to expire this month. He's the champion right now, and it's been confirmed by Dave Meltzer. PWI Insider first reported it. Marty Scurll's deal is up in November, and I've said this a million times, but none of the dirt sheets are writing about it yet, but PCO's deal is up in December in Ring of Honor. New Japan ran its biggest show in the history of the UK, Royal Quest, August 31st, and they drew 6,119 paid. It was not a sellout, and according to reports, the live show had tons of technical issues on the Fight TV feed. It kept going out over and over again, and the announcers were not audible at times. So not good for the pay-per-view stream, but I hear the show was good from the talk I've heard about that Ring of Honor show. In MLW news, there isn't much this week for the guy asking about that. Harry Smith is fighting Tom Lawler at Bloodsport coming up, and he's also wrestling in Great North Wrestling on October 19th. Ted Hart is going to be back in Great North Wrestling soon again, too, once we can work out our personal differences. But other than that, they have that TV taping coming up in Dallas, and hopefully they're going to continue to do well. I'm still beating MLW in YouTube subscribers right now. In Impact news, I guess the reason why Impact is now doing the joint show with AAA at for the guys saying don't forget to get Ted Hart a good hotel. He did have a good hotel. He had nothing to complain about there. He was whining. That's all I could say about that. He was whining. Maybe that's why he's not going to be on the Rockland event. We don't want any whining. There's enough. I'll say it right now, actually, for that Rockland event, there is another guy from MLW that's going to be on that Rockland event with that announcement coming soon. But yeah, as I was saying, the reason why Impact is doing that show with AAA is I guess they don't have a license to promote in New York, and Impact does. So that show just seems like a horrible disaster, being moved from the main arena at MSG to the Hulu Theater now for an event that's taking place in less than 10 days, with the only match announced so far is Blanchard versus Taya. And there really hasn't been much else announced other than Cain Velasquez will be appearing. So that's bizarre that they went through all the trouble to book Madison Square Garden, and this show has turned into a gong show. It could be one of the worst bizarre disappointments of an event in history. It could have been a great debut in the main arena in Madison Square Garden, but I guess a lot of Mexicans have been having visa issues too, I've heard, according to reports. And what I've also heard is people that bought tickets for the AAA show, the 2,000 or so people that had tickets, it's now becoming an Impact show. So I'd be a little upset over that too. You're going from a Lucha Libre product to an Impact product. And Impact right now on Twitch, they had 3,800 was the peak viewer last week for Twitch. Only 3,800 people, with 3,400 for Rhino versus Michael Elgin, who I've always felt was extremely overrated. He is also short. But yeah, I always felt Michael Elgin was overrated. I don't know what the big deal is about him. I'll go into some MMA news quickly. But the last thing I'll say about pro wrestling, so anyone watching this live, you can cut it off now if you don't want to hear about MMA. The Australian wrestling legend who also wrestled for Stampede Wrestling, Norman Frederick Charles, passed away. The third, Norman Frederick Charles III, passed away August 22nd in Milton, Florida, after battle with cancer at 78. So cancer is a horrible disease. Sorry to hear about that. Any Billy Jack Haynes news? I actually am going to ask some more Billy Jack Haynes stories in future shoot interviews because I've had a lot of interest over that. If he was able to get into Canada, which he can't, I would have, if he could have got himself cured of Hep C, which he isn't yet. But from all the reports I've heard, I would have brought him for a match in Canada, but he can't cross the border, unfortunately. But I'm sure our paths will cross again at some time or another. In MMA news, just to finish this off, Bellator signed Chris Cyborg to what's apparently the largest fight contract for any woman fighter in history. So congratulations to her. She's expected to get an instant shot at featherweight women's champion Julia Budd in Bellator. She's 34 now and has fought for 14 years. This is not a surprise that Dana White is saying BJ Penn is not fighting anymore on the UFC Boston event because of the street fighting he's been doing in Hawaii. Obviously makes the UFC look bad. It already has kind of a bad look to people that don't know MMA from the outside, and then they have fighters that he was doing a favor to. He had lost 7 fights in a row, doing a favor by giving him an 8th fight, and he blows it by getting in these street fights. So I hope he gets help and doesn't get any more head trauma, because I've heard he's had some concussion issues. So the UFC China show from last weekend drew 10,302 fans. No actual financial gate was given on that. So that's it for today. Thanks for the people are commenting on the transgender in AEW. I have not seen the transgender wrestler wrestle yet. That's unusual. I don't know what her level is. I do think that should almost be a separate, shouldn't be in girls wrestling, because a girl could get hurt with like a hard chop or a hard forearm. I know if I hit your average girl wrestler the way I wrestle, I would seriously injure them. So I think that the girls wrestling that were born women with the women genetics should have a separate division. And then if you're going to have girls that wrestle transgender wrestlers, if it's a larger transgender wrestler, they should really keep her away from the smaller women. In my opinion, for safety reasons, wrestling is a very dangerous sport, and it also depends on the style. If you're going to wrestle the Orange Cassidy goofy style where you're not connecting, that's fine. You can wrestle girls, but my style would never work against girls.